Dickson's Mental Health Podcast, aiming to spread awareness on mental health by sharing the real-life stories of those who've experienced it firsthand.
Matthew Dickson is here today.
Hi.
How's it going, buddy?
Not too bad.
Thanks so much for coming on, doing this via Skype.
Thanks for having me.
Via Zoom, not Skype. Same thing. You're over in St. Andrews, New Brunswick.
Yeah.
And you're zooming in, so it's awesome. Awesome to have you here, man. How are things going today?
Not too bad. Yeah, enjoying this warmer weather, slightly warmer weather, springtime, so yeah.
What's the temperature like over there today?
Oh, it's 10, 12 degrees, I think.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Summer's coming. Spring's coming. Is there a lot of restrictions there still? Like as far as the COVID and everything?
Things are lifting. Yeah. So there's still restrictions, but yeah, more things are opening up.
That's awesome, man. It's good. It's good news. PEI and New Brunswick are in good shape. It seems.
Yeah.
Hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thanks a lot for reaching out and wanting to come on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Yeah, man, me too. So there's a few different things you want to talk about, but why don't you just, I think you'd be the best way to introduce yourself and what you're here to talk about.
So my name's Matthew Dickson, and I've got schizophrenia, and it's a hard one. It's a hard mental illness. It's got more stigma attached to it than other mental illnesses. So yeah, it's been difficult for sure. I'm 48 now, and I got diagnosed when I was 22. I went to get help. I was willing to get on medication. I've taken the same medication for 26 years now. And I think with schizophrenia, there's about 75% of people, actually that's with 70 to 75% of people with schizophrenia have auditory or visual hallucinations. I never did. So that made it easier for me. I also fell into the category of wanting to take my medication. Some people don't want to take the medication. And I get it. It was hard. It's a hard diagnosis to accept. I mean, there's lots of horrible things you can go through, and this is one of them. So with medication, it's tough. As much as I wanted to be on my medication, it's a hard, pardon the pun, it's a hard pill to swallow. It's like, really, I have to be on a medication now. So part of me kind of I didn't really want to be on it. It felt like a ball on chain. Now, years later, all that I have to do is take a pill to be better. I mean, it's nothing. In the early part of the diagnosis, it's tough. It was a big change in my life, but I took it. But yet at the same time, I wanted to take it. It's like I knew it was one of the few things I could actually do to help me get better. So people think with schizophrenia, well, what is it like? And I try to tell people, like, it's not that different from other mental illnesses. People say, well, depression, they can kind of get that. Like, most people felt depressed, got the blues at some point in their life, or they understand anxiety, they've had butterflies in their stomach. But with schizophrenia, it's like, wow, I can't even comprehend that. That's the way I feel when I'm talking to people. But I try to tell people that it's not that much different. There's some things like, I never had hallucinations, but for me, my sense of space and time were affected. It felt like I was watching things in two dimensions. A lot of people say it's like watching TV, and I've heard people who don't have schizophrenia but other mental illnesses, or at least one other person I talked to who had PTSD. He said that he had same thing, like he felt like he was watching TV, sort of thing, or disconnected. That's sort of disconnected from life feeling. And for me, it's like watching a TV. It's like you can see what's on the screen of the TV, but you can't reach into it. You can't interact with the people in the movie. You're very disconnected from it. And my sense of time was affected. The days went by so horribly long. And yeah, it was with schizophrenia, disorganized thinking is one of the main things too. It's hard to gather your thoughts. Yet at the same time, people with schizophrenia say that as much as it's like my thoughts are just going by like at a million miles a second, you still have another part of your brain that thinks normally. It just goes along. Like in the first few years of my disease, I, after some so many months of recovery, I was able to go and volunteer at a local nonprofit. And I went back to university and took one course a term to try to get my degree back. I had to fail out of the last term of my degree, engineering. So I made these decisions. Like I'd be sitting there thinking, maybe I should go back to, try to get my degree. And I thought about that. And then I'd plan, go through my day. And so I'd still be doing things, but it's just this sort of overwhelming sense of just sort of, it's chaos. I kind of liken it to being chased by a heat-seeking tornado. It's relentless. Yet at the same time, as much as things are bad, things do get better. It's people often, that intense pain in the early years, or not the early years, but the early part of the diet. For me through university, I was muddling through. I knew some things were wrong with me, but I could still do things. I bicycled across Canada, and in university, I was getting mostly A's in engineering. I could still do things, but I knew something was a little bit off. But this was the early 90s, and people didn't talk about mental illness. I don't think Prozac was even invented then. So I didn't know. I could still get up and do things. But when the disease hit, it hit hard. And I was just flat on my back. I couldn't do anything. And so yeah, it's definitely tough. But the thing is that things do get better. There's so much I know now from having gone through it and from reading books on how to get better with mental health. I've read a lot of books over the years, and there's so much more I know now, like how to improve your mindset. Like I've been reading books like from Olympic athletes, Navy SEALs, and there's tons of books out there on how to improve your thinking. And this helps you whether you have a mental illness or not. This kind of improving your thinking. So if I knew now what I knew back when I first got diagnosed, it would have made my life a lot easier. And actually, one of the best books that I've found to help with that is called The Survivor Personality by Siebert. And that is it's a top recommendation. It's one of the top like 4 or 5 books that I'm always telling people about. And it's not just for mental health, it's for anything: cancer, alcoholism, severe injuries, you name it. That's one of my top books I recommend. So things like that, when the disease first hits, it's tough. It's the unknown. You don't know what your outcome is going to be. No one can say, well, you fall into this class of schizophrenia. It'll take so many weeks, months, years to get better, or this is what's going to happen. They don't say anything. It's just like, we're going to try to find a medication that helps you. It may take a while, but it's kind of good luck. It's you feel very helpless and confused and bewildered and depressed. It's tough, but I wish people knew when the disease first hits them that things can get better. They can. That intense pain can lessen as time goes on, and it lets you keep fighting for longer and longer. So with me, I noticed an improvement in my health every single week, and it's been like that without fail for the last 26 years. I'm still noticing improvements in my health. I was noticing improvements every week of 1994, of 95, 96. 94 was when I first got when the disease first hit, and when I went to get help. And every week, it's like, I don't know, over 1,000 weeks now that I've noticed improvements. And in around 2012, the improvements in my health happened more often than once a week, like every several times a week, or sometimes from morning to afternoon, I noticed an improvement. So it's been, yeah, and it's not easy, but it's, as a mental health advocate, like I'm trying to help people with mental health, specifically mental health in developing countries, because it's a topic that, or a cause that most people don't know about. Like I talk to people and say things like some countries have one psychiatrist per million people, and people are like, really? I'm like, I know, I didn't know that either. It wasn't until about 2016, 2017, I stumbled on a TED talk by Vikram Patel, and he was talking about how in developing countries they have, there's nothing. They have no mental health care. The good news is that they have a model, and Vikram Patel was instrumental in getting this started back in the 90s. And what they do is they go into a community and they teach some of the people there how to give basic mental health care to those who need it. And this model and other models similar to it, they're low cost, they're proven effective, and they're scalable. So that's the good news, that the World Health Organization is trying to figure out the best way to roll it out to the masses. They haven't done that yet, and so in the meantime, I steer people towards four nonprofits that are helping with this. They're relatively small. They're not as big as World Vision or UNICEF or any large nonprofits like that, but they are doing good work on the ground. One is Basic Needs US, basicneedsus.org, and Basic Needs they're the largest of their kind in the world. Well, Basic Needs, the main branch was made back around 2000, I think. They've been around for about 20 years, and they've helped close to 1 million people get basic mental health care over that time period. So they're still small. They only have I think a $1 or $2 million budget for the year, but they're the largest of their kind. So Basic Needs was, they merged with CBM UK a year or two ago, I believe. I was talking to, so they also have different branches, like there's in 14 countries, there's Basic Needs US, there's Basic Needs, there's some in Africa and India, China. So I talked to the Basic Needs US branch, they're in Massachusetts, and they said that even though Basic Needs, the head branch, merged with CBM UK, each of the 14 chapters in 14 countries, they are still operating. So I steer people towards Basic Needs US, just for simplicity's sake right now. And the other three I steer people towards are the Minds Foundation, mindsfoundation.org. They help people with mental health care in India. And another one is FindMind, FINEMIND.org. The founder is Pavel Repo, and he's helping people in northern Uganda get mental health care. And the fourth one is Strong Minds, strongminds.org, and the founder is Sean Mayberry, and he's helping women with depression at scale in Africa. And his model, it doesn't use medication, it's a talk-based group therapy, and he's getting good results with that. He also says that Sean Mayberry of Strong Minds, he's trying to get larger organizations like UNICEF and World Vision and whatnot already working but not necessarily working with mental health. He's trying to get them to, since they're already in the ground and in large numbers, he's trying to teach them his method of that group talk therapy, and getting to teach his army of volunteers and workers to use that in the places where they work, because it's scalable. So, yeah.
Okay. That's awesome, man. I want to get more into that, but first I have a few questions about, I guess, like your original diagnosis when you got diagnosed. what was like, you say it hit you all at once, and you kind of described that briefly, like the distortion of time and like that disconnectivity of reality. Could you maybe speak a little bit more like on that, like what it was like at that time, and also like the way you describe improvements each week? What sort of improvements do you feel? Like, I think for someone that may not understand, like what kind of improvements are you seeing, I guess?
Yeah, so I don't know why the disease hit so hard like that with me, and I don't know what other people's experience with it are like, but it's, I was muddling through. I could say I slowly got a bit worse through university, but I could still, I mean, weeks before I went into the hospital and was flat on my back and couldn't do anything.
What was the first, sorry to cut you off, but what was the first sign? I think that's kind of like, what were the first little inklings of maybe there was something?
Well, I'd say maybe in my in my second year of university, I found that I became more sort of emotionally flat. My emotions weren't as normal as they were, and I'd say things and do things that just didn't sound like me. I'm like, why did I say that? That didn't sound like something I'd say. And my memory was starting to go a little bit. Not really. I Most people say I've got like a really good memory, but it's not like I blacked out or forgot things that really, but I had through my whole disease, I had a bit of a hard problem with remembering things like short term, like what I did in the last few days. They kind of blended in and I couldn't remember them as much. But it's not like I blacked out. It's just but that was one of the first symptoms that hit me. Would have been in my third year of university. I found that I remember sitting in my dorm room and I thought, what did I have for dinner last night, like the day before? And I'm like, I could remember that if I thought about it for a little bit, if I couldn't remember it immediately, and I couldn't remember it. I'm like, that's not that's not good. Anyway, but I could still, it wasn't like a really super dramatic thing. I mean, I'd have a lot more dramatic things coming down the tubes later. So that was one thing. And then yeah, those are sort of the two big ones through university. And I sort of that feeling of disconnected, like watching things on TV. But the symptoms that I've described to you so far, they kind of they're not as intense as the feelings, the emotions you feel. Like I didn't have that bad emotions through university, but when over the course of a matter of a week or two or more, a week or two or three, something like that, I was after failing. I had to fail out of my university degree to go into the hospital. I just couldn't do anything, and the pain it just came out. It came on so hard. It was uh, the anxiety was like it's just it's just like a knife stuck through your chest. It's tough, and it's the emotions that are so intense, and your thoughts just I really just couldn't do anything, and it took a long time to come back from that. So yeah,
So it was like an overwhelming and like anxiety fueled feeling.
yeah. With schizophrenia, I had depression and anxiety as well. So it's tough. And people say, I remember at the time, it was sort of hard to even describe my feelings. I mean, I could describe my feelings to a large degree, but if you ask me, well, this feeling you're feeling right now, is that depression or is that anxiety or is that schizophrenia? I'm like, I don't know. All I know is I feel bad. I would sort of describe to people like my thoughts are racing. I've got, like a knife through my chest sort of thing. And I can't think properly. I feel like I'm watching things on TV. And yeah, it's, it's tough.
Right. So you end up going to the hospital, and what was that experience like?
Very scary. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the hospital. They do great work. I know the mental health care system needs improvement in Canada and every country around the world. A mental health expert from Harvard was mentioning in the United Nations that when it comes to mental health care, every country is a developing country. So yeah, there's room for improvement. Actually, I'll just answer your question here in a sec. There's a Todd Leader. He's in Nova Scotia, and he's got
Okay.
his book. It's not about us. It's about improving the mental health care system. It's a great resource. So when I went to the hospital, I mean, when I say it was really scary, it's because I was just so scared of the unknown and what was happening. Plus the anxiety. The anxiety just makes you feel scared for no reason. I mean, it's, why are you feeling anxious now, Matthew? Are you about to get hit by a transport truck? No, no, I'm just sitting here. It's a nice sunny day. Nothing to be anxious about. It just makes you feel anxious and makes you feel very scared. So there's that that underlying anxiety that you feel all the time anyway. But there's also the bewilderment, the confusion of like, what's going on here? Why do I, what, what's happening to me? What's the future hold in store for me? All that unknown. It's a lot to take in, and it's tough, very tough.
I imagine. So, how long were you in the hospital?
I was in the hospital 6 or 7 times through 1994. And after that, I got into a group home in 95, 96, 97. And after that, after 97, I've been living on my own ever since. So yeah, it was, I mean, before I went to the hospital, I'd already was living on my own. I was going to university, living on my own. I bicycled across Canada. I love adventure. I wanted to do more things like that. But when the disease hit, it just robbed me of a lot of my dreams. So the fact that I can actually I'm feeling so much better now. Like I'd say 2012, I'd say was I felt like I was starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. Like I kept improving, but through my whole recovery, I always felt like I was always scared of plateauing and not improving anymore. It was I wanted to get like I just wanted to get my health back, like everybody does who's sick. You just want to feel good. You just want to enjoy your day and enjoy life. So in 2012, I thought, I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel here. I think I might be able to I might be able to make like a full recovery here. And that was when 2012 was when my improvements started happening more frequently, like a few times a week or more. And then 2018 was when it's like, I think I've done this. That was when I started to get some times in my day of peace and contentment. And in the last couple of years, they just come on. They happen more frequently and more. It's wonderful just to sit here and enjoy life. It's really it's a treat. I'm still noticing some improvements, but the last couple of years have been wonderful. It's like wow, I and the last 4 years or so, I've started traveling more on my own, uh, exploring the Maritimes, and I've been out to BC a number of times actually throughout my recovery. But it's the last 4 years of just traveling on my own have been wonderful for me because I love traveling and exploring, and I just couldn't do that for so many years. At least on my own. If I had other people with me, it would have been easier. But I to have those dreams taken from you of your life, of your future, and back when I first got diagnosed, and to get them back again, to get your dreams back, to have peace and contentment, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
That's beautiful, man. Make me tear up. Oh, that's awesome, though. Yeah. So those moments of peace, that's kind of the improvements you've seen each week?
Yeah, they just, so one of the things I did, and I sort of have to, well, when I first got diagnosed, one of the things they said, Matthew, you you need to keep busy. You can't just lie in bed all day. And I knew that. I knew I had to get up and do things. And I didn't want to lie in bed all day. I wanted to do things. I'd rather, had the health to get up and do what I wanted to. But I had, uh, so I did. I tried to keep as busy as I could. It was tough. It's tough to keep busy when you just want to lie in bed all day. But I tried as best as I could to get up and do things. And around 2002, I said, you know what? I I I I can't do this anymore. I need to spend more time just sitting and thinking, and there's a reason for that. I still did what I could. I didn't, lie in bed all day, but I spent a bit, some more time lying in bed or just sitting there thinking, because what I was doing, what I wanted to do from like 94 to 2002 was I wanted to sit there and think. And I found a book, and it's called post-traumatic. It talks about post-traumatic growth, and that's another whole topic. But the book is What Doesn't Kill Us by Stephen Joseph, and I found this book around 2010, and what he says is that people with, and I'll go off on a bit of a tangent here for a sec. People who've gone through PTSD, they can through reflective rumination. He talks about two different kinds of rumination. Rumination, sitting there thinking. There's a downward spiral kind of rumination where you think, my life is awful. I can't do this. I can't get through this. And there's no progress made with it. But there's another kind of reflective rumination where you actually do make progress. It's kind of like putting the pieces of a puzzle together. And he says with reflective rumination, people can, with PTSD, they can get post-traumatic growth. It's a whole new field they started studying back in the 90s, post-traumatic growth. And people actually, so the way post-traumatic growth started was a cruise ship sank back in the 90s, and psychologists sent the survivors, short-term and long-term after, a questionnaire saying, how are you doing mentally? And short-term after, all the survivors are a mess. But long-term after, some of the survivors are saying, I feel better than ever. I've got a new lease on life. And the psychologists are like, better than ever? Like, what's going on here? And they said it's the old cliche. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But no psychologist had ever studied that until the 90s. So it's a whole new field, well, in the last 20 years or so. And people become stronger, can become stronger. And what they use, that main method is reflective rumination. So back in when I got diagnosed, I was ruminating, but I didn't know that there was this different kind of rumination. So I didn't, but I tried not to ruminate. But in 2002, I said, I can't take this anymore. I wanted to spend more time sitting here and thinking. So I did. And I sat there and I would think. And you mentioned earlier about my improvements, what kind of weekly improvements I had. Well, the way it felt, 94, 95, 96, the whole way through was that I'd be sitting there and I'd be thinking, and all of a sudden, maybe for like 20 minutes, half an hour or so, I'd have a little sort of lightening. My thoughts were a little bit clearer, and I felt a little bit sort of lighter, not so heavy-hearted and down on myself. And we're talking like slight improvements, but I could feel it. And once a week that happened in 94, 95, 96 for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and they just built on each other as the years went on. And in 2002, I said, I want to do more of this because it works. It's working for me. And I know I should be up doing more things and being more active, but I need to spend more time sitting here thinking. And I know that's on the outside, people might be wondering, why is Matthew spending so much time there thinking? Well, I'm putting the pieces of a puzzle together. I'm reorganizing my brain. And part of me is thinking, well, Matthew, was that really you doing that? Or was that just the disease working on its own? Did you really restructure your brain? And like, All I know is I felt an overwhelming urge to do that, and I couldn't help it. And as the years went on, my thoughts week by week by week became clearer and clearer, and I felt lighter, sort of happier emotionally, and less heavy-hearted. And all I know is that it works. And in 2010, when I found that book on post-traumatic growth and talking about how people with PTSD can use reflective rumination to get better, I'm like, well, this is what I've been doing for years. So yeah. The other thing about post-traumatic growth is that they talk about post-traumatic growth and PTSD. It doesn't necessarily have to come from, in this book, it doesn't necessarily have to come from trauma. That can come from what they call a seismic event in your life. And they talk about how a seismic event is where your worldviews are shattered. For me, I was going through life, thinking this is the way, life is, going through elementary school, high school, and that was, I knew what I knew to expect from life each day, and I knew life could be hard, but I knew you could lose your legs, all sorts of bad things could happen. But when the disease hit, I had no idea how bad life can be, and that was where and I don't know how all this works. Honestly, I don't. All I know is that they say when your views of the world are shattered, it takes time to rebuild them. And people can fall into three categories. They can go into the downward spiral, like my life is awful, my life's shattered. And the second category is they get back to their original, the way they were before, like their original worldview, and but there's no growth. And the third category is they get back to they incorporate their trauma into a new worldview. So, and that's where they get the growth. That's where what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So yeah, I still have some time, some things to work on as far as reflecting goes on trying to just think about what happened to me, because for all these years I've been fighting to get better, and it's kind of like if you're playing football, tackle football, and the ball is coming at you, and you've got the ball and someone's about to tackle you. Can you really do like math in your head at that time, or think about what you're gonna have for dinner that next week? That's where
Yeah,
the feeling of chaos comes from, and that feeling of like being chased by a tornado. It's like you don't have time to think from moment to moment.
right.
So it's like if you saw me, sitting in the chair watching TV, it's like, well, we're just sitting watching TV. Yeah, for you. For me, it's like I'm trying to just keep my thoughts together, and I'm just being bombarded by stimuli, and it's hard to even think. It's like being in the football is coming at me, people are about to tackle me. I don't have time to think.
Yeah.
So it's a chicken and egg thing, which causes which, but it's the way it makes me feel, when I'm
It's almost like drowning, and all you're thinking about is getting to the surface.
yeah, exactly,
And then
exactly.
once you and then you start, the only time you can really think about it is when you get to the surface. You're like, Jesus Christ, I was almost drowned.
Yeah, I know. It's where I am the last, I don't know, so many few years or so, I've been able to think more about the past. And that's actually one thing they talk about post-traumatic uh, stress disorder too, is that it's hard to think about things as having happened in the past. And in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or so or more, I've actually been able to think about things, of having a memory, and instead of reliving it all the time. It's that I was able to think about, oh, that that's a memory in the past, and it could have been a memory
Yeah.
from 20 years ago. So yeah, and I'm having more of those, and I still need to do more and reflect on what I've been through. But I mean, there's also the human experience. I mean, I'm a human being, and
Right.
a healthy human being, has these thoughts anyway of thinking about your life and what you've been through and everything like that. So, it,
Right.
yeah, there's that aspect of it too.
That's interesting, man. As far as like, would you say it's like internal dialogue? Like when you said you needed to think more and like all the, like, would you say that it's like that internal dialogue that you're working through to kind of move yourself forward. Like there was a lot of internal dialogue you needed to work through, I guess.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, why that happened to me, why I've gotten better, I I don't know. I really don't know. All I know is that I feel good, and yeah. So people with schizophrenia, people say, what can I do to get better? Well, medication is, from what I understand, is often a great something that you need because it's a severe mental illness. And I'm not an expert by any means on this, but so what could I do? Well, I took my medication. I went to get counseling. I went through counseling for 6, 7, 8 years or so. The after I first got diagnosed, and other than like the reflective ruminating, the other things I could do were just sort of general life health things like getting enough sleep, exercising.
Yeah.
I tried to find a job, tried to socialize, and eating better. It's just sort of general things. So I
Yeah.
spent I spent the last 20 years or so reading books on general health, like all these tips on how to get better. So
That's awesome, man.
yeah, I think education, like for people, there's so much information out there, and especially with the internet and with so many things at your fingertips, I think that's a wonderful way for people to like. So there's not tons of literature out there on schizophrenia and how to get better, but there's tons of literature on like mental health and mental
Yeah.
health, people skills. There's, I mean, if you look in the business world, all these CEOs and business people, a lot of them are working on mental health and diet and exercise and people skills. You walk into the
Yeah.
business section in your bookstore or go online, and a lot of these books are the same thing as in like the self-help section. It's personal development, and
Yeah.
I, so I was reading all these things and changing a lot of my thinking, even though I had schizophrenia, and a lot of my thinking I couldn't really change much from day to day. I could
Yeah.
still change sort of my baseline normal human thinking, not sort of the schizophrenic thinking. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was a big help for me, and
Yeah.
I could read these books and understand, how people read more about like, people skills, like, why, how to deal with people. I'll throw you another book here. So this is one of my favorite book for learning how to deal with people. It's what police officers use to deal with people. George Thompson
Okay.
uh, wrote it, Thompson with a P, and
Yeah.
it's made my life so much easier. And it's a top pick for me.
That's awesome. Maybe after we're done with the podcast here, I'll just get you to send those to me. I'll put them all in the description so people can go find them at ease.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that really resonated with me when you said about what you said about reflective rumination and like just like from what I've been through, like my story of just it's not a mental illness, but it's just like the reason why I started this podcast. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the girl I was dating committed suicide 4 years ago. And just going through that grief, like one thing that really, really helped me and like how I got through it was the reflective, it was like counseling and a lot of other things. But like the biggest thing for me was like that reflective rumination, I think. A lot of that over time and like just moving through my thoughts. I have so much to get through and developing my new perspective on life, as you said. But it's crazy now because it's been 4 years and now I can look back on it and be like, oh shit, like I said about drowning and coming up in water. It's like now I can look back and be like, fuck, like that happened. You know what I mean? Like I can just imagine what it'd be like over 20 some years for you, where it's like you're just so focused on getting better. It's like getting better. It's survival mode. And then once you finally find some green grass, you're like, holy shit, I just went through a lot of stuff. Like, it can't, like, that actually happened, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it just hits you from nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, thanks for sharing that. I'm just like, and it just, like, when you said, take, like, your dreams were taken away, and then, you know, you finally figure getting them back. Like, that fucking, honestly, almost made me tear up, because it's like, I know from my experiences, even though they've been like, just, you know, everyone goes through their own battles and it's obviously different, but like, man, that struggle and that grind of like just getting better is, it's unbelievable. Like, it, I couldn't imagine over 20 some years. Like, it must have just been, there must have been times where you thought about giving up and you didn't want to keep going. And, like, all the confusion, I mean, probably at first, you know, the confusion must have been unbearable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I, when the disease hit and I got diagnosed and they said, Matthew, you've got schizophrenia, I thought, well, what do I do now? You know, what's the future hold in store for me? What am I going to do? And I remember sitting there in the psych ward in the hospital and thinking, you know, what do I do? And
Mm.
I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I'm going to try to fight this. I'm going to try to fight. And I don't know where this came from, and I'm so thankful this happened to me. It didn't make things rosy and glory, you know, by any means, but it was definitely a big help to me. I had total acceptance for what I was going to go through. I said, I accept the fact that my life will be awful for a long time. I just accept that. I had total acceptance, and I'm very thankful I had that. And I have no idea where that came from. It literally just happened in a second or two. I'm like, I just accept this. I accept that I'm gonna have to go through a lot. I'm gonna have to go through an awful lot. I just accept that.
Right.
And yeah, it's 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 it made my life easier for sure.
There's also a thing where it's like, um, I mean, I'm sure that it's hard to accept for anybody, but when you don't have a choice, you know, that's when you really, you know, if you had a choice to do it, you never would have did it, right? So when there's no choice, it's just, you either accept it or you don't, you know?
Yeah,
And that's when you talked about, like, okay, this is my new, the three options, right? This is my new worldview, or I'm just going in a downward spiral, you know? Like, there's kind of no choice.
yeah. That's one of the biggest things I try to tell people is that when you're faced with that and you have no choice, it's just like, well, you'd be amazed at what you're capable of. It's
Yeah.
and Navy SEALs in their training are actually taught that. They're taught that you're capable of 20 times more than you think you are. And you know, where do they get that number from 20? Well, they say, you know, well, technically it could be 10 times, it could be 100 times, but they use that number in their training. They say and they teach people, they teach Navy SEALs in training, they just keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing. You think you're done now? No, you can keep going. You can keep going. You can keep going. You can keep going. And
Right.
that's one of the things I've learned from what I've gone through is that you think you're done? No, you just, the amount of energy, the amount of determination and patience and fight and courage that people have inside of themselves,
Yeah.
waiting to be used at a moment's notice,
Yeah.
it's massive.
Yeah.
I had no idea that I was capable of fighting that much. And I believe everyone has it. Everyone has
Yeah.
more fight in them than they think they do.
Well, I think it's programmed in. I think even like just the fact that humans lasted this long, the fact that humans are here today just proves that we all have it in us. You know, I think it's programmed in us. Like, you probably heard this before, where someone said to you, like, I don't know how you do it, or like, I could never deal with that. It's like, well, you just never had to, when you have to, there's no option,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. I know people ask me that. I'm like, well, when it's crunch time and there's no choice, you, you just run right through it. You just face it and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So
oh,
what, sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to mention, so there's a girl she's in New York City now, and she's got schizophrenia. Her name's Cecilia McGough. I think that's how you pronounce her last name, McGough. And she has schizophrenia, and she started an organization called, it was originally called Students with Schizophrenia, and they changed the name to Students with Psychosis. And they she has so schizophrenia often starts uh, when you're in university. So they reach out to students with schizophrenia or psychosis, and they have chapters in countries all over the world. And I wanted to mention that to your viewers because that's uh, yeah, that's they do great work. There's also the Schizophrenia Society of Canada and the Schizophrenia Society for each province. Like there's a Schizophrenia Society of PEI and New Brunswick and all the other provinces. So yeah, those are. And there's also another girl I've recently discovered, Lauren Kennedy. She has a YouTube channel called Living Well with Schizophrenia, and she does a good job of giving out resources and tips to people living with the disease. So yeah, those are some great places for resources.
Right. That's awesome. I'll definitely share all these resources in the description so people can find them. But no, that's great. Um, it's awesome to find resources, and I mean, even this story, like I think, can be helpful for anyone that's diagnosed or going through the same thing you went through. I mean, like for you to come through 20 years and of battling, and then the light is there at the end of the tunnel, and you're starting to feel better. I mean, that's like inspiring for anybody, I think.
Thanks. I thank you. I yeah.
So you've seen the TED Talk in 2016, right, about mental health in developing countries, and that's what kind of got you started on this project. Now you have a website and stuff. You want to talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, my website is mindaid.ca, mindaid.ca. And so for years I thought, when I got back up on my feet, what could I do to help other people with mental health issues? And for years I thought I'd be helping people in, New Brunswick, Canada, wherever. But when I saw that TED Talk by Vikram Patel, I thought, well, if I'm going to be helping anybody with mental health issues, I should probably help people who need it the most. So I don't right now. I don't have the health to or the mental health to go to some of the developing countries that I try to advocate for. I've been across Canada throughout my disease. I know I can do that. I don't want to jump on a plane right now and go to Africa and other places. I mean, I don't know if I could even handle going to Europe. It's I just I take things day by day, and uh, when my health allows. So I'm helping. So I'm here in Canada, and I'll help wherever I can. I have other interests as well, and that I try to that I try to help other people with. I've got a fitness website, easierfitness.net, and it's primarily diet and exercise, but there's also some mental health stuff I share there too, and a little bit of people skills. So,
Awesome.
but the Mind Aid website, that's where I think of the best bang for my buck or the biggest impact, because there are over 270 million people in developing countries, and that number seems low, but that's what they say. People 270 million people in developing countries with no mental health care. Some people with mental illness in developing countries are actually kept in chains. They're tied to a tree, to a bed, to a log in the back in the shed. And the World Health Organization created a chain-free initiative in 2006. So people are working on this. They go out and they go to communities and they see people shackled, and they take the chains off them and they start giving them basic mental health care. And people today are working on this. They've been working on it for years. So I didn't know this. I didn't know this about mental health in developing countries. It was never spelled out for me. So in the last 3 years, when I tell people about this, people say, "Really? It's that bad?" I'm like, "Yeah, I never thought about that either. What do people do with OCD, anxiety, schizophrenia in Zimbabwe? What do they do? There's no, I mean, some people, there's no hospital for 400 miles. There's nothing. There's no mental health resources whatsoever." And so my main thing is that if people simply knew this, this isn't mainstream conversation. If you go online, you can see stuff about it. There's articles written in the New York Times about this, but it's still not. Most people I talk to, I'd say at least 3/4 or more of the people I talk to don't know about this. And a lot of mental health professionals I've talked to in Canada don't know about this.
Right.
And so I think if people simply knew it, if it was mainstream conversation, if the cause went viral and everybody knew about it, think of the number of people today who'd want to help in some way, whether it would be sending $10 to a charity to help, to starting their own charity. I mean, this work, this basic mental health care, these models they have, they're scalable. And but some people, there's entrepreneurs throughout the world who, if they knew about it, I'm sure some of them would say, "You know what? I had no idea it was so bad. I've got family members with mental health issues, or I've gone through mental health issues before. Why don't I start raising money for this?" And a big inspiration for me is Scott Harrison of Charity Water, charitywater.org. He's in New York City, and he doesn't deal with mental health issues, although I know he wants to, as well as all the other causes he could help in the world. He's starting with water. In the last 14 years, he's given, what is it, 11 million people or so clean drinking water.
Wow.
And he is talked about because he's not, he was a nightclub promoter, and he went to Africa, saw horrible things, and wanted to come back and help. He decided to focus on water the most, because that's where you get the most, water affects so many other things. So he's doing that, and he's very innovative, and a lot of entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, look up to him to look for ways to expand their nonprofit, their cause work, and do better work. He's been a huge inspiration for me, and very innovative, uses a lot of tech. And yeah, so I'm not anywhere near that stage right now. The last, I mean, I'm still working on my recovery.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much at the end of my recovery. I'm finding peace and contentment, but I still don't want to take on too much, because that was the big thing with my disease. I couldn't take on too much. I had to keep my life very simple, very limited in what I could do. But what I do is Marnie McBean, Canadian Olympic rower, she uses the term comfortably uncomfortable. I push myself, try to, but I don't want to push myself too much. I want to be comfortably uncomfortable, like push myself, but in a sort of okay range of pushing myself. So that's what I've been doing my entire life, and I still do that. I take on new things, but only when I'm ready, and when I feel I'm okay to do that. So 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what will I be doing with mental health care? Hopefully a lot more than I'm doing now. But I was very happy that I got my website online 2 years ago, mindaid.ca. Very happy about that. And I got on Facebook and YouTube, and I got on LinkedIn just recently, about a month ago. YouTube and Facebook I've been on for about a year or more. So I keep tackling things and trying to take on more things. I'm trying to reach out to podcasters, YouTubers, other people, entrepreneurs, filmmakers. Um, I've got some ideas for how to get more people talking about this, mental health care in developing countries. And yeah, and on another note, with schizophrenia, I was on the schizophrenia or the Students with Psychosis Facebook page in the last week or so, and they
Right.
have been putting out pictures of their Zoom calls with their uh, advocates or their chapter leaders in their different branches around the world, and it's for the first time I'm seeing pictures of people with schizophrenia, and it made me realize like, wow, I have not seen many pictures of people with schizophrenia. I've seen lots of pictures of people with cancer in the media, pictures and videos. Like I've seen that. I've seen pictures of people with depression, with schizophrenia. I really haven't, and I've got the disease, and I've had it for 26 years. And I'm seeing pictures of these university students with schizophrenia on their Zoom calls, like, and I'm like, wow, look at these people. They're people just like me, just like me. I'm older than them, but just to see anybody with the same disease as me, I just haven't seen that. So
Right.
this is I mean, part of me is thinking, could I make like just a video, have people with schizophrenia send in their pictures or short videos of themselves to me, with their consent and all that, and make a video and just like a video collage of here are people with schizophrenia, because I haven't seen that. I'd like to see pictures
Yeah.
of people with schizophrenia. I mean, and show the world what we look like. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even know what we look like, and I've had it for 26 years. So that's an
Yeah.
idea that popped in my head just a little while ago. So I,
No, I
yeah,
think that's a good idea.
like to help raise awareness and just and make people feel more comfortable around us. And like, look, we do things. There's on the Students with Psychosis page, they've got, here's so they have little bios like, here's so and so. I like this. I like you name it. All sorts of different interests.
Yeah.
Cecilia,
Yeah.
she's into astronomy. So
Yeah.
it's not like we're monsters.
Yeah.
It's actually what Cecilia McGough, when she started her platform in 2015, called it. She said, "I am not a monster, schizophrenia." That was her. She's got a TED talk about that. Like, I am not a monster.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had this in the 90s. I'm like, really? She has to say in 2015, that far into the modern world with all this technology and awareness, we still using the
Yeah.
word monster with schizophrenia? And I totally
Yeah.
understand why she uses that. I'm like, wow, it's a sad that we still have to talk about that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
No, I think that's a great idea. I think that'd be a great way to boost awareness. I think there's like I guess stereotype would be the right word. The
yeah,
schizophrenia, just like lack of education of how it affects the people, right? Because there is a broad spectrum of how it affects people, right? Like even in your case where you don't have auditory or visual hallucinations, like
yeah,
there's a broad spectrum of how it affects people.
yeah. I've read that there are like 10 or 12 different kinds of schizophrenia, and I haven't been able to find much on each type. And when I was diagnosed, no one ever said which kind I was. All I know is that I've got schizophrenia. So I, I know it's different for other people. One of the things I want to mention is that I people with schizophrenia are no more prone to violence than the rest of the general population. In fact, we're more prone to be victims of violence because we can't sort of defend ourselves. We're just kind of helpless a lot of the time. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. No,
it's
that's also like a common misconception, probably too, or they
yeah,
well they just associate delusion with danger, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's tough.
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
it's tough to have to live with that and to go through every day thinking, when I approach people, like, what are they thinking of me? Do they think I'm gonna be violent? It's just like, no, I was never violent throughout my disease. It's just like it's just not in me.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like anybody listening to you, anybody that actually talked to you, it's like, oh, it's just he's a really nice guy, you know. And this thing kind of hit him when he was young, and look at him now. Look how far he's gone.
Thanks. There's on that topic, there's a guy, Dr. Daniel Amen, Amen, and he's a leading brain scientist in the United States, and he's got a ton of books out. And in one of his books, he talks about how he worked with murderers and improving their brains. And for example, I think it was his nephew, perhaps, when he was younger, or a relative, I believe, or it could be someone he worked with, a kid, maybe 10, 12 years old or something, and nice, wonderful, happy, good kid. And he
Yeah.
started becoming violent. And they treated him, and they looked at his brain, and he had a tumor growing in his brain. They treated the tumor, and the violence went away. And so when Dr. Daniel Amen was working with murderers, he said that a lot of murders he could treat, he could get them thinking better again. So it's, people think about, how could, people perpetrate this sort of thing? Well, according to him, it can be a brain thing. So it's, yeah, it's sometimes I think about, you see on the news, someone murders so many people, it's scary, but at the same time, I'm thinking, well, anyway, there's more to there could be more to the story than that. And, I've had to live with that, of, walking up, I've had that with years, I walk up and people, if they know I've got schizophrenia, I'm thinking, what are they thinking about me? So I've had to live with that. And it's, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes to like I mean, we just experienced this in Canada with the Nova Scotia shootings and stuff. But at the very least, the discussion should be mental health, because no one kills a bunch of people that is not sick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on this, and part of me is like, I don't really know how much more to say about this topic, because I just don't know
Yeah.
what to say about it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm not an expert either. But no, and that doesn't take anything away from all the suffering. Like, I couldn't imagine. It's a very sad thing that happened, and that does happen all the time. Especially in the States. There's, I don't know what the statistics are, but it's crazy. But
yeah.
But yeah, man. I just want to say thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all everything you shared, all the resources you shared, and we'll definitely share that in the description. And really appreciate it, man.
Cool. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciated this. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, man. All right. Well, try to survive the quarantine. Hopefully, we open up more.
Yeah. You too.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Yeah.